Well, hello to all my friends in Vienna and throughout Austria. I've been asked by my colleagues at Eine Stadt, ein Buch to present my latest book in German translation for you. It's called wir nicht Menschen. It is 19 short stories. And the one I would like to present to you briefly tonight, I am delivering because we are in the midst of the COVID-19 lockdown here. We're in our third week, in fact. And this story, which was in the New Yorker a couple of years ago, deals with the same kind of ethical situation. That is, should we imprison people who have not committed crimes and yet are carriers of a disease that could disastrously affect the public? The fugitive. They told him he had to wear a mask in public, which was ridiculous. It made him feel like he had a target painted on his back, or his face actually, right in the middle of his face. But if he wanted to walk out the door of the clinic, he was going to walk out with that mask on. Either that, or go to jail. Outside, it was raining, which made everything all that much harder, because what were you going to do with a wet mask? How could you even breathe? Here, inside the office, with the doctor and his caseworker from health services, there was no sound of the rain, or if there was, he couldn't hear it. All he could hear was the rasp and wheeze of his own compromised breathing as he sucked air through the fibers of his mask. The doctor was saying something to him now, and Marciano watched him frame the words with his hands before they both looked to the caseworker, a short, slim woman with a big bust and liquid eyes he would have liked to fuck if he wasn't so sick. She was named Rosa Hinojosa, and he kept saying her name in his head because of the way it rhymed, which somehow made him feel better. You understand what the doctor is telling you? She asked in her clipped north-of-the-border Spanish he could have listened to all day under other circumstances. But these were the circumstances that until he got better, he would have to play their game, Dr. Rosen's game and Rosa Hinojosa's too. He nodded. No more lapses, you understand that. You will report here each morning when the clinic opens at 8 for your intravenous medication. And she held up 2 plastic pill containers. You will take your oral medication without fail every night at dinner, and you must wear your mask at all times. Even when I'm alone? She looked at the doctor, said something to him in English, nodded, then turned back to Marciano, her breasts straining at the fabric of her blouse, a pink blouse that made her look even younger than she was, which she guessed was maybe 24 or 5. You have your own room in this house? She glanced down at the clipboard in her lap. At 5119 West Haley Street, is that right? Yes. There are other roomers there? Yes. All right. When you're alone in your room, you can remove the mask, but only then, and never if you're in the common area, in the kitchen or the living room, or even the bathroom, except to brush your teeth and wash your face. You're highly contagious, and if you were to cough without the mask on, the bacteria could get into the air and infect your roommates, and you wouldn't want that, would you? No, he agreed, he wouldn't. But now the doctor was saying something more, his tone harsh and hectoring, and though Marciano didn't register what he was saying, or not exactly, he got the gist of it. This was his warning, his final warning, and now there could be no appeal. He watched the doctor's eyes that looked at him as if he were less than human, something to step on the street and crush, angry eyes, hateful. And what had he done to deserve this? He'd gotten sick, that was all. And couldn't anybody get sick? Rosa Hinojosa, her lips were fascinating, plump and adhesive, and he wanted desperately in that moment to get well, if for no other reason than to kiss them, or even for the promise of kissing them. Told him what he already knew. That because he'd stopped taking his medication a year ago, his case of tuberculosis had mutated into the multi-drug resistant form, and his life was at risk because after this, there were no more drugs. That was it. They didn't exist. But more and worse. If he did not comply fully, no lapses, Dr. Rosen would get a court order and incarcerate him to be sure he got the full round of treatment. And why? Not out of charity, entertain no illusions about that, but to protect society, and at a cost. Did he even have an idea of the cost? Of as much as $200,000 for him alone. She paused, compressed her lips, looked to the doctor. Then, as if she were tracking the drift of the very microbes hanging invisibly in the air, she brought her eyes back to him. "You agree?" she demanded. He wanted to say yes, of course he did. He wanted to be cured, but he was already feeling better, much better. And this whole business was so cold, so hard, he honestly didn't know if he could go through with it. And wasn't that the problem the first time? He'd taken the medicine, which was no easy thing because it made him sick to his stomach and itch as if there was something under his skin clawing its way out. They said he'd have to stay on the regimen anywhere from 6 to 30 months, but within 3 months he felt fine, his cough nearly gone, and his arms and chest filling out again. So he started selling the pills because he didn't need them anymore. And then he stopped coming to the clinic altogether, and that would have been fine, until the disease returned to shake him like a rat in a cage, and he spat out blood and came back here to their contempt and their antiseptic smells and their masks and dictates and ultimatums. He wanted to say yes, and he tried to. But at that moment, the cough came up in him. The long, dredging cough was like the sea drawing back over the stones at low tide, and the inside of the mask was suddenly crimson, and he couldn't seem to stop coughing. When finally he looked up, both the doctor and Rosa Hinojosa were wearing masks of their own, and Rosa Hinojosa was pushing a box of disposable surgical masks across the desk to him. He couldn't see her lips now, only her eyes, and her eyes as rich and brown as 2 chocolates in the dark wrappers of her lashes. Didn't have an ounce of sympathy in them.